Are you a female leader or wanting to expand and move into more of a leadership role? Then the best way that you can do that is by learning from other female leaders. And so today you're going to listen to this episode where I'm interviewing three amazing, not only leaders, but leadership authors. And today I have three fabulous ladies who are leading in their lives, in their careers. We have Gigi, Carol, and Karen. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Hello.
Diane.
Hi.
Hi, hi. So, the exciting thing is, first off, the announcement that very soon we will have Dynamic Women Leadership Secrets being published, and you three are authors in it, aren't you?
Yay.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we are.
Yay, so awesome. And so, why don't we, so our listeners know, just, tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's start off with Carol.
Oh, hi. Well, Diane, thank you so much for this opportunity. This is fantastic. So, I'm a business strategic coach I service all of North America. I specialize in contracting and construction, and I'm based out of British Columbia.
Awesome. Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Karen.
So, hi, everyone. So, I think my day job can best be described as focusing on leadership development, which is teaching people how to be leaders. And I have a particular passion for supporting women and people of color. My unpaid 24/7 job is that I'm a mom to two daughters, which equally brings me joy. But now I'm happy to announce that I can add leadership author to my title as well.
Awesome. Thanks,
Amazing.
Karen. And Gigi.
Hi there, Gigi Blair, originally from Texas. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia now as an executive coach for about 15 years and working with clients across the US and Canada. Focus on a lot of small business owners and women in leadership roles. Absolutely love what I do. It's an amazing opportunity world to be in.
Great, great. And as I mentioned, all of these women are authors in the upcoming book, Dynamic Women Leadership Secrets. And there is going to be a launch party. If you want an invite, please go to the show notes. You're going to see a link. We're going to put you on the list so that you can come and you're going to get a free ticket. But we have limited spaces, so make sure that you get on the wait list so that we can invite you. So as they have explained, they all are in the world of leadership, and they're also leading in their own lives and their work that they do. And if you want to know more about them, please check the show notes. There's going to be longer bio and a way to get in touch with them. Well, let's kick it off with a little bit more of like a personal journey question. So I'm curious, and we're going to start with Karen. Can you share a pivotal moment in your leadership journey that you would say shaped your perspective on leadership?
So, one thing that really stands out to me is when I took on the role of a founder for an inclusion network or an employee resource group. And I would say that that was a pivotal moment because as much as I do this on my day job in terms of leadership development, it was the first time I realized really what it meant to like lead without a title. So you don't have to have a title to show up as a leader. And I think I had all sorts of imposter syndrome. I had all the research, and all the guidance to how to show up as a leader, but it was just that imposter syndrome that showed up for me that I was like, you know what? I'm just a senior manager. I just got promoted. I'm still trying to figure out what it means to be a leader or what it means to lead others. And I thought if I had a more senior title or if I had more experience in the inclusion and diversity space, I could be a better leader. And it was this and that, and I had all these if statements in my head. But looking back now, I realized that I leaned into my lived experiences and I really listened as a leader, listened and heard the people and what they were saying and what they needed to bring this network alive. And I was really passionate about bringing it to life. And I realized it didn't matter what experience I was bringing in terms of that leadership title, so to speak, or like the fact that I was just a senior manager in my head. I think what really mattered that I showed up as a leader was my passion for the people. That it really mattered to me to make the people that felt invisible to become more visible, that so that they can break through doors and ceilings.
Yes, so important. So there's a lot of mic drop moments here. The one that I think stood out the most for me is the one we were saying, Karen, around like leading now before the title, that you can be a leader. And so listener, have you caught that? So if you're feeling a little bit inadequate or that you're not in that top leadership role, like how can you be a leader today? And maybe even pause this, go back and listen to all the different qualities, skills, talents that Karen was sharing, like listening or having passion. Those are things you can infuse now without that mega title beside your name. Thanks for that, Karen. Let's go to Gigi. What is something that shaped your perspective on leadership?
So, Diane, I think it's such a great question because it's prompting a reflection, which I think is a key skill that for leaders to develop, and reflect back over not only the day, the week, the morning, we can start there, the afternoon, but then over your career and what stood out. And for me, I've had the privilege of working for a couple of people. And in this case, they were both men, but their whole passion, as Karen said, was to promote people out of their organizations.
Mm,
They brought them in and they were so focused on developing their skills, and they gauged their success by the numbers of people that they could promote to better, bigger roles, more responsibility. And that to me really set a stage for me that I knew when I got to a leadership role, I wanted to emulate that.
I love it. And in the work I do as a coach, I feel like we unlock the greatness in others and we pull that out of them. But the idea of doing that in a corporate role with maybe the end goal of they're leaving the company, that's not always ideal, but what a selfless
Right.
role, how empowering. And I'm really seeing that that type of leader you're talking about has an abundance mindset. Some,
Absolutely. And it was their definition of success.
wow. I love
And as such, people really wanted to work for them
it.
because they had that reputation. So they did not have a shortage of skill talent
Mm.
to work with them. So it was just that wonderful circle to watch it.
Wow. Awesome.
Amazing.
Hey, Carol, how about you? What's that pivotal
Yeah,
moment?
yeah. So mine is personal. It started in 1995. My husband and I started a specialty concrete company in Vancouver, actually. And as a woman in that industry in that town, I very quickly started to realize, and I think a lot of leaders can sympathize with this is, that one day you're the person in the field, and then the next day you have to show up for a bid or show up to present to clients, and you really have to be these two different people, and the exhaustion that came with what I call teeter totter leadership, right?
Mm.
Is one day you're in it and one day you're back in the field, and that strive to grow. So that's what motivated me into the path that I'm in now after we sold that business in 2019 in Vancouver. And it led me to want to be able to teach other entrepreneurs. And again, I specialize in the concrete or in the construction industry. These guys are putting their lives on into their businesses. And, a lot of them don't know how to step up into leadership.
Mm.
And, so I've created an academy that we talk about all sorts of different aspects to business, but the one we're talking about right now is leadership. And, what are some of the simple things that you can do to really help people take that one step, right? One step today, implement it, practice it, protect it, and then do another step next week. So it's through my own experience of coming up through growing my own business into the largest specialty concrete company in Vancouver, to selling it, to then wanting to teach what I know through my own experience to others.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It reminded me actually of most of my life, I have just stepped into leadership roles in the classroom, on sports teams and such. But entering corporate, you kind of start at the bottom and you work your way up. You don't just get to be at the top in your very first job. But what was interesting is that moment that I was promoted above my coworkers, I felt that teeter totter there in the way of it's really hard. It's really hard to do that movement. And listeners, Carol's definition, teeter totter leadership and such, she's actually writing about that in the Leadership Secrets book. I got to read that piece. It's wonderful. So you're going to want to get your copy of that from Carol or for someone in order to be able to read that. Well, let's jump into leadership challenges now. Oh, we got to get the honesty here, right? We're going to start with Gigi. And the question is, have you faced any resistance or biases in your leadership roles? And how have you navigated, or how did you navigate those challenges?
Another great question. Leadership it is fraught with challenges. And I described the individuals that I had worked for that really set my model of how I wanted to lead. I've also had the opportunity to work with people that were not like that at all. People that I would call ungracious, unfriendly even. And just borderline angry kind of all the time. And that showed up in their work and in the environment that they created for people to work in. Challenging place to be, for sure, kind of the antithesis of the first event that I described. But I think it's so important there that recognizing what you can change and what I couldn't change. And if I hope to change them at all, it would just be through my behavior and my presentation and influence them in some way. So it's very important to me, it was to stay aligned with my values and firmly rooted. And I think a key skill that we are all always, I don't say all and always often, Diane, but we are all always learning to be better communicators. And those situations are primed to work on communication skills when you're working with people that, can we just say, honestly, should not be in a leadership role. Kind of how did they get there is a head scratcher.
Yeah, we all have stories about
We
that.
all have stories, I'm sure. Yes.
And so that's why I'm glad that in the book, a lot of you, and we have 35 authors who have shared the great ways to be as a leader and the lessons that have been learned and the stories. So yeah, we are going to face bad leaders, but we can control ourselves. And key thing, listeners, stay true to your values, is what Gigi was saying. So let's go to Carol next. How about you? Have you faced resistance, biases?
Yeah, well, first of all, being a female in the industry I was in, tons of biases, but the resistances, and I think as women, we can all relate to this, is, as not only as leaders in our industry, but as moms, as wives, sometimes we get stuck in that, oh, it's just easier if I do it myself. Right? And the tendency to not delegate, the tendency to just take on more and more and more. And I think we're all old enough to know that that leads down a path that's no good for anybody, right? And it doesn't apply just to women, but I think when we talk about the mental loads of a household and stuff, women understand that potentially at a deeper level. So when it comes to leadership, it's about allowing and trusting your vision, trusting your team, trusting your capacity to delegate, right?
Mm.
And once you step fully into leadership, your prime directive is about helping your team just stay in the alignment of what your vision is, right? As a, and creating the structure that helps them stay there.
Mm.
So that's what I ended up doing in my own business. That's what I've done now in my own personal life as well. I'm a little bit luckier. My kids are grown and moved out, so I'm not having to wrangle young children anymore, but my husband definitely got a bit of a wake-up call. Um, yeah, so the bias was, or the challenge was, it's just easier to do it myself. And initially, yes, but that leads to, fatigue, burnout, all those things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because so often solopreneurs or even business owners or leaders will not expand their team or lean on their team at all, or the other words, empower their team
Yeah.
to be able to step into those roles. I actually did an episode last week on this piece, and delegation is smart. You got to delegate. So Gigi gave us values, you gave us vision. These are key things, listener, that if you don't have these either in your own business or you're not locked into what your company stands for or what you personally stand for, those are a few things you might want to take some notes and go and do that as an activity. Let's jump to Karen. Let's see what her biases have been, challenges. I know that part of that is kind of what pushed you to do something specific that you wrote about in the book.
That's right.
But anyway, I'll let you share what you're going to share here.
Yeah, so I think I wouldn't even like it's even hard to use the words resistance and bias because I think with my cultural upbringing, we've almost been taught to be like, let's be polite, let's respect our elders, let's respect the system. And that's what I did for many years, just respecting the system until I was like, hey, this doesn't add up. Like, I feel like there should be more awareness around, you know, East Asians and Southeast Asians in the workplace. So I would say like the resistance I felt, it wasn't done out of malice, I don't think. It's just this level of unawareness, something that wasn't done before. So even I would say even as we launched the Inclusion Network, which took a couple of years, I would say, and you can read more about it in my book, but I think even the resistance around like, hey, should we put some communication around Lunar New Year? And how about Asian Heritage Month? Um, and it was harder than I thought, to actually put some communication around it. Only because, again, it was that level of unawareness. It wasn't done before. How do you do this? Do you do it in multiple languages? What's the right words to use? And the other thing, to be fair, is like, Lunar New Year is generally around January and February, which is the busiest of busiest periods in my
Yeah.
organization. So it's not an ideal time to launch, an inclusion network anyway. So I personally had to do some research myself and found an alternative in Asian Heritage Month. And again,
Mm,
I grew up in the Canadian school system. I knew about Christian holidays, Easter, Christmas. I probably even learned about Black History Month growing up, but
yeah.
I didn't know, even as an Asian, about Asian Heritage Month. And it only officially became Asian Heritage Month about 20 years ago in 2002. And
Wow.
so it was a big learning aha moment for me too, like just to navigate like, oh, I don't even know my own heritage, like, but I want to launch it and make it big. And so in trying to get recognized, I really leaned into this concept around sponsorship, meaning that, you kind of lean on more senior leaders in your organizations to navigate the system. And I've heard about the concept of sponsorship in the women leadership program that I run, and also in sports, right? So in sports is about getting funding, getting sponsors to fund you and to fund your training, perhaps, right? Or like get sponsorship onto some products. And for
Yeah.
women in sponsorship, it's about, getting noticed, getting that career advancement. But what's interesting,
Mm,
what I learned about sponsorship in launching an inclusion network, it's just like, I just wanted some airtime, like I wanted some communication around Lunar New Year and Asian Heritage Month and to make it become visible. And I'm proud, I was very proud that finally in 2021, my organization launched the first Asian Heritage Month, and it's become a tradition ever since then. And I
Wow.
think what I've heard from our members is that it's really made them feel like they're not invisible anymore. They felt like they mattered. They felt seen, and it created a sense of belonging and unity.
Wow. Wow. What this has really opened my eyes to is leaders need to think about the people that they're leading and what they need in order to be seen
Mhm.
and valued and feel like part of the team, and to honor their perspective as well as our own perspective. There's so much there we could unpack a whole episode, I'm sure, or a whole new book. Maybe, Karen, that'll be your next book. Who knows? Let's jump to the next question. This one's around collaboration and community. That's things as women we already love to do. But how has collaboration specifically for you and with other women leaders influenced your perspective on leadership? And we're going to start with Carol this time.
Yeah, so I when I lived in Vancouver, I used to belong to a couple of women's networks, and they were invaluable. You know, they actually allowed me the opportunity to put language to what I was experiencing. You know, I was in a world of men, and you know, there was grunts and tugs and all that kind of stuff. And they weren't great communicators, you know. And as we've already determined here on this call, communication is huge. So, you know, so stepping out and stepping in and trusting other women to help you articulate what you're feeling, what you're thinking, where you might not have the language around it. That has been absolutely huge for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier too around mental load, and a couple of you have mentioned about children and responsibilities there. And so other women get it. I can remember being invited to like a high income earning men's mastermind. It wasn't a men's mastermind, it just was only men in the mastermind, and I was invited to go. And then they're like, "Yeah, you could bring your spouse." And I go, "So what is my husband gonna do with all the ladies?" "Oh, they normally go shopping." I'm like, and what does the group normally do in regular time? "Oh, well, it was so fun. We got like this big screen TV on the roof. We watched the big basketball game." And I was like, "Oh, this is so different." I'm like, "What about the kids?" And it's been like, "Oh, the wives took care of the kids." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." So
Yeah.
this idea of being like, be with your people, whoever that may be, but being with your people, whether it's other women, other business owners, in Karen's case, culturally, women who get her, so important. Well, let's go to Karen next. How about you? How has collaboration and community fit in for you?
So I would say I'm
Awesome.
really lucky because I do get the chance to work with a lot of smart women, and they bring in strengths that I may not necessarily have, and I think Gigi talked a bit about that, like, and so I think the other thing I should clarify too is I've met many capable men as well, and that has obviously influenced my leadership style. But I would say both women and men do bring in strengths from a collaboration standpoint. And when I think about the inclusion network I built and the really smart women I got a chance to work with, my co-chair, she was really great at navigating politics and strategic thinking, whereas I was more on the implementation and team building side. But when you mentioned Diane community, that brought in another thought because that's where I do think that, women do have a different lens. I think there are specific things that women struggle with personally, and talking to another woman does create that safe space to show up, and how I show up as a leader, right? And I'll just give a quick example in a time where we were both co-chairs, so we were both leading the inclusion network. And there was a specific initiative that I was super passionate about, but I was also dealing with something personally. And I had to tell her about it because it would impact my ability to lead. My mom was going through surgery. And so I had to take a step back and change my focus. And just her understanding the pressure I was under, the cultural even additional cultural pressures I was under as a daughter of an immigrant, mom, and there's heavy reliance on the daughter doing a lot of things for the mom. It made it a lot easier for me to explain it without going through so many details, without saying, hey, Karen, why don't you outsource this or delegate this or whatever have you. I didn't really have that luxury in this circumstance, and she understood, and I didn't have to explain too much. And she created a community and a safe space for me to share that, so I could show up differently as leader, and and do my sense of responsibility as a daughter.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you did bring the men in, because I do have to say, yes, I agree. There's a lot of amazing men out there. Um, just what we're doing with the podcast, Dynamic Women Podcast, and the Dynamic Women Leadership Secrets book is really giving that voice to women. And we're actually collaborating together. But I'm glad that you brought in that example of you and your co-chair or the woman you're working with, that ability to share vulnerably in order to get the proper support that you need. So needed, so needed. Okay, Gigi, how about you?
So Diane, most women leaders that I know, probably leaders in general, would describe themselves as a continual learner, a lifelong learner. They study, they read, they listen a lot. But I actually think that connecting with a group of peers in structured, facilitated dialogue is a critical column and the secret sauce of being able to live and lead well. There's nothing that I have found. I'm a member of those groups, I lead those groups, and there's nothing else that I have found to replicate that experience that comes from that space, which ends up becoming really sacred for the people that are in the group. And we hear it over and over. Leadership can be lonely. Everybody on the call knows that. Everybody listening knows that. And so being connected in a group of peers that are dealing with some of the same issues takes a lot of the loneliness out of it, and also just gives strength and courage as well as best practice sharing and problem solving. And you can make progress quicker on a lot of different issues that you have. So I'm a firm believer in the community piece of peer groups.
Yeah. And as you were saying, facilitated, right?
Facilitated.
Everyone is accountable to showing up and staying
It's
on
not
topic.
just getting on the phone and chatting, which
Yes.
that has its place too in the coffee shop, but
The
structured
structure.
lead dialogue that is led by a skilled facilitator is the secret sauce.
Yeah. And remembering that even if you are a leader and you've got hundreds of people under you, beside you, working with you, it can still be lonely because you can't complain down. And,
Right.
and sometimes you can't complain up. And so to have other people at that same level with you will understand you, and you have permission to lean on them. Because if we're in those wrong places, those wrong facilitated groups, even where we're trying to lean, but that person can't hold us, it's going to cause us to come back. So listeners, make sure you've got an amazing community of people around you. Gigi, Carol, and Karen all shared what they love about that. And so make sure you have that space for yourself. It is time for the rapid fire round. We are going to get quick. We are going to give some mic drop moments here, maybe. The question, and we're going to start with Karen this time. What's one trait or skill that has been key to your success as a leader?
So I would say winning deep. And I got this concept from listening to a podcast between Brené Brown and Dr. Pippa Grange, the difference between winning deep and winning shallow. Winning deep is where you can actually feel like the richness of the journey, the highs and lows, the struggle, the mess. And you really do it because it's reasons outside of performance. And for me, it's like I really want to make a difference as a leader. So winning deep is that trait for me.
Nice. Winning deep. Okay, Gigi, how about you?
So learning to stay engaged in the places of discomfort.
Ooh, that's not an overnight activity or a skill to learn. Okay.
It's something we constantly work on, but it will serve you very well.
Wow. Yeah. And a reminder to listeners that even when you hit that new level of success, it doesn't mean you're not going to have uncomfortable or hard situations. You just get different ones. And then,
Diane, we say new level, new devil.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
Carol, how about you? What's that one skill or trait?
Trait, staying curious.
Huh?
Really looking for the ways to simplify and improve what I'm doing, so that I can show up better, faster in the world. Yeah, just staying curious.
Good.
Yes. And being curious is such a good way to deal with difficult situations, difficult people, right?
It's a great line of inquiry.
Yes, amazing, amazing. Well, ladies, this has been fantastic. So many nuggets. Listeners, I hope that you have been taking notes. And if you haven't, you need to either re-listen to this on the podcast, re-watch it on YouTube, make sure that you get those pieces from it. And I encourage all the listeners to take one piece that you learned from even just one of the ladies and put it into practice so that you can grow your leadership skills, abilities, and maybe step into that next leadership role. So as a reminder, we have the launch of the Dynamic Women Leadership Secrets book. Gigi, Carol, and Karen are all authors in the book, along with 32 other authors, including myself. And the book is going to be coming out very soon. Launch party, tentative date, June 13th. So save that in your calendar, mark it in there. So again, thank you, ladies, for sharing and for being here today.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much, Diane.
Diane. Yeah.
So everyone, thank you for being here for the Dynamic Women podcast. Please make sure you hit subscribe, share with a friend, and until next time, stay dynamic. Bye.